Thank you all for joining us here at I-80 Sports NHL, where today we are talking World Junior Tournament and more NHL news. Thank you all for joining us again here at I-80 Sports. Make sure that you check out our website, i80sports.com. Make sure you hit us up on Twitter at I80_SportsNHL, which at last look, we are approaching 450 followers, which is awesome because I made the bold prediction and the bold, lofty goal of 500 followers by the end of the year, and it's looking really realistic. Let's keep that going. Keep following our page. Check out all of our content on our I-80 Sports page as well. We got football, college football, soccer, and of course some hockey news to divulge. I'm Brian. He's Tom. Tom, how are you doing today?
Doing well. And for the second week in a row, we finally have some more stuff to talk about. Some real stuff, some present stuff, some stuff that's going on. So, it's nice. It's a good sign, it's a good sign to see things moving in the right direction.
That we do. And before we dive into even more news, we've got some hype for this Wednesday because Tom and I are going to be special guests on an upcoming podcast. So we're here right now to plug the Frozen Four podcast. It's a group of four guys based out in the upstate New York area who talk mostly Buffalo Sabres and Toronto Maple Leafs, other news and notes around the NHL, but they're just a fun group of guys. They have a fun podcast. They make it fun. They make it interesting. If you are a fan of podcasts, you can easily find them on Spotify at the Frozen Four podcast, and we're going to be special guests this Wednesday night. So if you love hearing us talk and you want to hear some more NHL content, you get to hear Tom and I soothe you in soothing baritone for your listening pleasure. Sorry, I'm just too hyped about this. I'm too excited about this. So definitely make sure you check that out, the Frozen Four podcast. I'll say that at the end just for those who might have missed it just now. But diving into some NHL news before we go over the World Junior Tournament, which is going to be awesome. Even more awesome than that, we know when the season is going to start for the NHL. We have a tentative NHL opening day of January 13th, 2021, which is awesome. We've all been waiting for this announcement. We've all been waiting for the CBA to clear and for the NHLPA to be on board, as well as the Commissioner of Hockey, Gary Bettman. Tom, quick hit. What do you think?
I think it's a great thing. It's going to be a little longer than your lockout season. I think they were saying 56 games. I know they're still hammering that out, but it's a good thing. You started up mid-January. You figure, you can get a 2-week training camp in, and it's good. It's good. We'll have hockey. It's obviously the circumstances are a little bit different this year, but you know what? A shortened season, a season where things are out of whack, is better than no season at all. And I still can't understand why there's people out there who say shut it down, cancel it, let the players rest, blah 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 blah. I don't understand it. I'll take a shortened season. I'll take a bubble season. I'll take any season over no season at all.
I agree, and I think this is a very positive bit of news. I will say that the NHL does need to make sure that player safety is of utmost importance, as well as staff safety and all personnel that's going to be going in and out for games, for events, really just making sure, because it's no secret. There's some stuff still going on out there. This virus, unfortunately, has not slowed down like people have hoped. I think there is a light at the end of the tunnel at this point, whether it's the actual light or Godzilla about to mouth beam us. I don't know which it is, but I guess we'll only see. But that's great news. More coming out of this NHL opening day slate is a full unofficial division realignment. And personally, I'm so glad that we spent almost a month and a half previewing the old format, because now you can forget all of that, because we're going to have to think about how these division realignments look, which, if you're wondering how these divisions might look, we will be talking about this a lot more next week. We're just giving the quick highlights with this because we want to dive into the World Junior tournaments for this week and really preview that because that's going to be starting first. But next week, we will give you at least the quick hits about how these divisions will look. So if you're hyped for that, if you're hyped for the NHL season, make sure you just keep checking out our content on our YouTube page, which, quick little highlight there. We got the most amount of views on this past video that we've seen ever since our very first video in August, which is awesome. Keep sharing it with all your friends. I love it. I love to see the hype behind our videos. Before we move on to the World Junior Tournament, we did want to mention, unfortunately, the passing of Pierre Lacroix, who was the architect of the 90s and early 2000s Avalanche Stanley Cup teams. Had been, I'm trying to remember, was he the owner or was he the general manager, Tom?
He was the general manager. I believe Philip Anschultz, the people who own Walmart, actually own the team. He was a very good GM. He was one that wasn't talked about as much, but he was a guy who could make a lot work with little. What people don't realize from back then was that the Avalanche, despite winning all those cups, before they moved into the Pepsi Center, when they were still playing the old McNichols Arena, were actually one of the least revenue-grossing teams in the league at the time. They didn't have the money. After they won that 96 Cup and they lost to Detroit in 97, they actually did have to cut a lot of dead weight off. They had to get rid of guys like Mike Keane. They had to get rid of guys like Sandis Ozolinsh, and he was able to still keep that team competitive and work rookies in, work young guys in like Milan Hajduk, Chris Drury, and Alex Tanguay into the lineup and keep the team competitive. It's almost sort of like what Pittsburgh did with Crosby and Malkin and inserting young guys in with them. He sort of was like the blueprint for that, where he was putting guys like that with Sakic and Forsberg. And before we move on there, if there's one last thing I want to say about Pierre Lacroix is he maybe pulled off one of the biggest fleeces of all time way, way back when, 20 years ago, when Ray Bourque was asking out of Boston. Bourque said he had no interest going out west. Bourque said he wanted to stay close to family, he wanted to stay on the East Coast, he wanted to go to a contender. Everybody and their mother thought Ray Bourque was headed to the Philadelphia Flyers. Who is it? Harry Sinden even told Pierre Lacroix that he's not going to want to go to Colorado. He's not going to want to come there. Lacroix just told him, he said, listen, call me when you have your best deal. Just call me. He goes, we don't even have to make a deal. We'll talk about it. They even had the Philadelphia jersey made for Ray Bourque down in Philly. And Lacroix pulled off one of the biggest fleeces of all time and getting Bourque traded out to the Avalanche. And, well, we all know what happened after that.
One of the most memorable images, in my mind at least, is watching Ray Bourque finally hoist that Stanley Cup. And it was a beautiful image and especially well due for him. And it was a really brilliantly done deal by Pierre Lacroix. And certainly on behalf of I-80 Sports, we do send our condolences to the Lacroix family and estate at this time, during this difficult time. Again, Pierre Lacroix unfortunately passed away at the age of 72. So, transition. We are going to be talking about the World Junior Championships, the World Junior Tournament, if you will. And we feel like this is a tournament that some hockey fans, diehard fans, really know the ins and outs about the World Junior Tournaments. We know that there are those hockey fans that might not really know what the World Juniors are all about. Luckily, we have your resident expert, Tom, right here. And he's going to give us a little bit of backstory and history and fun facts about the World Junior Tournament. So, Tom, take it away.
Okay, very good. Well, before I go on any further, this tournament is for the best players 20 years old and younger throughout the world. It was started unofficially in 1974, was held in St. Petersburg, Russia. At the time, it was Leningrad under the old Soviet rule. They held two more unofficial tournaments in 1975, where Winnipeg and Minnesota split the host duties, and then they had another one in Finland. Finally, in 1977, they had an IIHF-sanctioned one in Czechoslovakia. The tournament always starts around Christmas time. More often than not, it starts on Boxing Day, which in Canada, it's looked at as a national holiday. You work your Christmas dinner off and you sit there and watch Team Canada. Speaking of them, they have the most gold in this tournament. There's been two separate times where they've won 5 in a row, 93 to 97 and 2005 to 2009, which was ended by our team, the USA, on Canadian soil. And speaking of our team, we've won it 4 times. We've won in 2004. We've won in 2010. We've won in 2013, which was maybe one of my all-time favorite Team USA's was that 13 team. And also in 2017, where we also won on Canadian soil in that memorable shootout in the Bell Center in Montreal. Man, I wish I could have been up there to see that. Many great players have come to this tournament, such as Wayne Gretzky, John Tavares, Austin Matthews, Capo Caco, Brendan Shanahan, Sergei Fedorov, Sidney Crosby, and Connor McDavid. And now, in my opinion, it's a tournament that doesn't get enough hype in the U.S. Everywhere else, it gets a ton of hype, but down here it doesn't. And the way we are with sports, the way we are with amateur sports and guys who are developing and coming up into the pros, it should be looked at more. You know, you have college football and college basketball where you have your BCS and you have your NCAA tournament. Both great things. Hockey, you have the NCAA, you have the Frozen Four, but not all your best players are playing in college. You have Americans playing in junior. You have all the best players coming into the league playing all over the place. And this tournament is what brings a lot of these guys together, and it showcases, you know, who's going to be the next stars in the league, who's going to dominate, you know, who your team might have a shot to draft. And I feel that it never got enough press here. And over the past, say, 10 or so years, it's gotten a little bit better, whereas now it's on the NHL Network. Now you can watch all the U.S. games. Now you can watch almost everybody's games on the NHL Network. Whereas in the past, growing up in the 90s, like maybe you find the U.S.-Canada game on MSG on New Year's Eve, you know, because they had nothing else to put on. Like I remember in 2004 when the U.S. won for the first time in the Czech Republic, they put it on ESPN. But I feel like although it's still not as hyped as it should be here, it definitely has gotten better over the past few years.
I definitely agree on that regard. And all that history is certainly interesting. And obviously, when we're talking about, you know, our team and how we've won it 4 times, obviously we're talking about the US of A and how the United States have won 4 separate times as well. Before we move on to, you know, some ins and outs of this year's tournament, we should also go over the format of this tournament and how this tournament is structured. So, Tom, once again, take it away with the format.
Okay, well, this year, as in everything else, we're under some unique circumstances. More often than not, this tournament is usually held in 2 cities that are close by to each other, or 1 city that has 2 rinks. This year, it's going to be done a little bit differently because we're in a pandemic. The travel, you know, try and keep the travel restrictions to as little as possible. And because the bubbles worked so well in the playoffs, they're going to be doing the same thing with this tournament. It's going to be held in Edmonton under the same bubble format. All the games are going to be played at Rogers Place. All the players are going to be held in the bubble and in those same hotels. You're going to have the traditional 10 teams in the tournament into 2 different pools. You'll have Pool A consisting of the host team, Canada, Finland, Switzerland, Slovakia, and Germany. Then you have Pool B, which has Russia, Sweden, United States, Czech Republic, and Austria. Each team will play 4 round-robin games against the opposing teams in their group. At the end of the round-robin, 4 teams from each pool qualify for the quarterfinals. They'll do a crossover. Now, what I mean by crossover is the number 1 team in Pool A will play the number 4 team in Pool A, in Pool B, rather. The number 2 team in Pool B will play the number 3 team in Pool A, and vice versa. Your 4 winners that'll play for the semis, and then your 2 winners of that will play for the gold medal game. The tournament this year, we have it's a little different. The tournament's actually going to begin on Christmas this year. Normally it begins on Boxing Day. Some years begin on Christmas. This year it's going to begin on Christmas. Our team, the United States, will be playing on Christmas. Canada will stick to the traditional route. They won't play their first game until Boxing Day.
All really good information to have, and we hope you got caught up on that. Now, what we want to do real quick before we dive into some of our predictions and bold predictions with this tournament, we also feel that it's necessary to go over a little bit about each team currently in this tournament, as well as some key players to look out for. So without further ado, let's dive right in and looking at this. So first on the docket, we've got Team Austria. Some key forwards on Key Austria to look out for. Number 9 overall pick from Minnesota this year, Marco Rossi, as well as Senna Peters. Key defensemen in Timo Nickel and Martin Urbanek. Next, Team Canada. Key forwards, quite bluntly, everybody. I'll name all the players right now, and these are all players that are currently prospects in the NHL or have played, some minimal NHL service. Quentin Byfield, Dylan Cousins, Kirby Dock, Dylan Holloway, Peyton Krebs, Connor McMichael, Dawson Mercer, Alex Newhook, Jacob Pelletier, Cole Perfetti, Jack Quinn, Ryan Suzuki, Philip Tomasino, and Connor Zary. And you might be thinking to yourself with that, like, wow, that's a lot of forwards. There's got to be a couple on there that, you're probably missing. No, that is literally the entire forward group. We'll dive a little bit deeper into that thought in a little bit. Key defensemen, again, everyone. Justin Barron, Bowen Byram, Jamie Drysdale, Caden Gooley, Braden Schneider, just to name a few. Team Canada, man. Holy moly. Next, we're looking at the Team Czech Republic. Key forwards here in Jan Majsek, Pavel Novak, and Jaromir Pitlick. And key defensemen in Stanislav Svozil. Next, we've got Team Finland, which is a little bit interesting this year, and I'll explain why. You have key forwards in Anton Lundell, former draft pick from this year, Kasper Simon Tyvel, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounce names here.
The next one's very difficult to pronounce.
Yeah, and Brad Lambert, who
that's hard, man.
Here, the youngest player in this tournament at 16 years old, which is quite stunning for a very talented Finland team to have Brad Lambert in your top 6 at 16 years old. And key defensemen in Ville Heinola and Santeri Hataka. One interesting name that you should keep in mind that is not in this forward group is projected number 1 overall pick for this upcoming year, Atu Ratti. That's something to keep in mind of a player that they do not have this year. Next, Team Germany, and there is another interesting name not here, and we'll go over that. Key forwards in John Jason Peterka, Lucas Reichel, and Tim Stützle. And key defenseman Maximilian Glotzel. And key player missing from Team Germany this year on his own accord, Moritz Seider, the captain of Team Germany from last year and defensive prospect for the Detroit Red Wings. Next, we've got Team Russia. Some key forwards here. Vasily Podkolzin, Rodion Amirov, Mikhail Abramov, and Yegor Chinikov. Key defensemen in Shakir Mukhmadulin and Semyon Chistyakov. And a key goaltender and one of the best goaltenders in this tournament, Yaroslav Askarov, the former first-round pick from this past year. Really interesting team for Team Russia this year. Next, moving on to Team Slovakia. Key forwards, and I'm going to butcher this completely. Key forwards in Maxim Kajkovic, Mikhail Mrazek, and Martin Kromiak. And key defensemen Samuel Nazko and Oliver Turin. That was not easy. Team Sweden, one thing we do got to mention here in a second, and I'll mention it now. You might notice under key forwards, Carl Henriksen, he is actually not in the tournament. It was recently announced that he will not be going to the World Junior Tournament this year. But regardless, key forwards in first-round picks, Alexander Holtz and Lucas Raymond, Simon Holstrom, Noel Gunler, and Zion Nybeck. And key defensemen, Philip Broberg, Victor Soderstrom, and Tobias Bjornfoot. And a key goaltender to keep in your ear, Hugo Enelfoot. Alnefelt. Sorry, I can't pronounce names and words today, apparently. Next, Team Switzerland. Key forwards, Simon Knack and Lorenzo Canonica. Sorry. And key defensemen in Inaki Baragano and Noah Meyer. And finally, Team USA. Key forwards, Trevor Zagris, Alexander Turcotte, Cole Caulfield, Bobby Brink, Patrick Moynihan, and Arthur Kalev. Key defensemen, Cam York, Jake Sanderson, Ryan Johnson, and Tyler Clevin. And key goaltender in former first-round pick, Spencer Knight. So, there is a lot that we just threw at you. There's a lot of names that we just highlighted. Some very butchered names on my part, but I'm sorry. My bad. I will learn those names a lot better. Trust me on that one. But there's a lot to unpack here. And what we want to talk about first is a team that will surprise many people in this tournament. It might be because of particular players. This is a team that might not necessarily win the tournament, but could surprise a lot of people in this upcoming tournament. So, Tom, who's your pick to surprise people this year?
Well, I'm coming out of left field here, and I know you guys heard my my little my rant or my praise of what's going on in Germany right now with just the way hockey is over there. And I really, really think Germany may turn some heads this year. Now, I know they don't have Seider, and that is a loss. Don't get me wrong. But when you have Tim Stutzla, you have Lucas Reichel, you have JJ Peterka out there, you have three pretty good forwards out there, they may turn some heads. It's not out of the question that they may upset a team or two. You know, they're playing in I guess a weaker group really, and outside of Canada and Finland, it's kind of a toss up between them, Switzerland, and Slovakia. You know, Switzerland international competition is always kind of like that team that you can't take lightly, and Slovakia is kind of like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in this tournament. Some years Slovakia comes in and they're just beyond terrible. And then other years when you take Slovakia lightly, they upset a USA, they upset a Canada. But I really think Germany, if they can get the wheels in motion early, that they could maybe finish third or even second in this group. I have one other team that may surprise some people too. And even though this is a little bit of an easier group, I kind of like what Finland's doing too. You know, they may be without Adu Ratti, but they have Lundell playing. Lundell, who was highly regarded, and they have one of that I call it the three-headed monster. One of those guys in Brad Lambert playing, just pretty much because Shane Wright and Matthew Savoy, they're just not making Team Canada over that roster that they have. They're just not making it. So if Brad Lambert, shows that he can be the player that he's projected to be, his stock may rise in this tournament. Especially maybe if they stick him on a line with Lundell. I don't know if they'll do that. A lot of times in these tournaments, they like to keep these kids kind of, sheltered. They don't want to play the young kids too much and have them playing too soon. But it would be interesting to see if Brad Lambert can take the reins of Finland and see what he can do in this.
I definitely agree. I think Germany does have a very interesting lineup, and I do like what Finland has done. I might have to go with my team that could surprise people. I might need to go with Sweden here. And I know they have a couple cards stacked against them, but, obviously losing Carl Henriksson on your lineup is big, for this lineup. But I really, truly think that highly of forwards Alexander Holtz and Lucas Raymond to really kind of step up in place of him. And I think what a lot of people will find is how good of a pure scorer Alexander Holtz could eventually be. And if you have Lucas Raymond playing alongside of him, I think that could be a very deadly combo for Sweden. And I think a lot of teams are going to have difficulty handling them, especially when they're, in their opposing zone. Another player to keep in mind on Sweden is their goaltender, Hugo Alnefelt. And a lot of people will be quick to say that Spencer Knight and Yaroslav Askarov are the two best goaltenders in this tournament. I would actually say that Hugo is up there too. I think he is absolutely going to save Sweden a lot of nights. As good as Sweden's lineup is, having the right person between the pipes is everything. And he is going to be the make or break of Sweden's success in this upcoming tournament. And if everything breaks correctly, they could find themselves in that top three at the end of the tournament. But as I like to say always, there are winners, there are losers. But in this case, maybe it's not a loser, but we're just going to be looking at who might be a disappointing team in this upcoming year. It could be along the lines of, this is a team that is very talented, but just can't quite put it together. It could be like, this is just not a team that's meant to succeed. It could be a team that has all the hype and then just falls flat. So, Tom, without further ado, who do you think is going to disappoint in this tournament?
Okay, well, I'm going to preface this with a little anecdote here for anybody who grew up in New Jersey in the 80s, mid-80s, late 80s, on the bar scene and the club scene. There was a hard rock heavy metal band that played around here called TT Quick, and the TT stood for Thrown Together. Great band. If you're ever bored, look them up on YouTube. But Alas, let me move on here. And that, unfortunately, I think is the theme with your team that you just praised, Team Sweden. You lost Wallander, you lost Henriksen, you had to swap the whole coaching staff out, and this just seems like it's a dumpster fire waiting to happen with Team Sweden. Granted, they still have a lot of talent on that roster, but to switch out a coaching staff, to lose two key cogs of your team this close to the tournament, it just doesn't bode well. It doesn't bode well, and they have been a juggernaut in the round robin of this tournament over the years. They have an undefeated streak going, and I had it, and I can't remember what it was, but just with all this surrounding them right now, it's just all signs are saying that this is not going to be a good time for them. This is not going to be a good tournament for Sweden. So, unfortunately, Sweden, who has always been a lock for first or second in the group, has always been a lock for the knockout rounds. I can see them still making the knockout round here, but I don't see them going undefeated in the round robin or losing one game in the round robin like they usually do. I just with all everything going around them, it just doesn't look too good.
And I think that's fair. I think that is a fair assessment when you have a fresh coaching staff, an abrupt change like that and missing pieces. I think it does sometimes spell disaster. For me, part of me wanted to say USA for the spot, but I actually really don't think so. I think USA does have a good lineup going into this tournament. But after scanning the rosters more, I actually think that Russia can be a little bit disappointing this year, given their talent. They have some very capable scoring on both sides of the puck. Vasily Podkolzin is a gifted scorer. Rodion Amirov and Abramov together is also very, very good. I think Shakir Mukhamadullin is a fantastic defensive prospect and definitely the highlight of that defensive core for Russia. But I just feel like they're going to have a tough time getting things done against all the other talented teams. I think a lot of teams just have a little bit more than what Russia currently has. And yeah, Russia's got Yaroslav Askarov. But you can have good goaltending, but if you don't necessarily have the right defense in front of them, yeah, you've got Shakir Mukhamadullin. After that, it kind of slides off a little bit. Russia's defensive core is not as strong as some of the other units amongst this tournament. It's not as strong as the USA, I don't think. It's definitely not as strong as Canada. I think it's a push when it comes to looking at them in Sweden, but I think I give Sweden the benefit of the doubt over on their defense. Like I said, Russia can score, and Russia will be able to score. I mean, sometimes people say sometimes a really good defense is a really good offense, but I don't think their offense is that good to compensate for that. And I think Russia could end up struggling at times in this tournament, and they might have trouble finding their way towards the top three. They might have a more difficult path towards that top three in this tournament. Finally, before we leave you guys with these predictions and previews with the World Junior Tournament, obviously we want to talk about who do we think is going to win the whole entire thing? Who's going to come out on top when the dust settles, when the final whistle blows? Who's going to be that team to win? Tom, what's your prediction? I think it might be obvious for both of us, but let's dive in.
It is obvious, but I just want to piggyback with one thing you said about Team Russia with this kid, Vasily Podkolzin. I really think that this is his last chance to prove himself. He was projected to go in that 19 draft, number 3, but behind Hughes and Kakko. Obviously, the transfer agreements with the KHL, nixed that a little bit. Vancouver still took him, but he really hasn't been tearing it up over in Russia like everyone assumed. And I mean, this tournament may be his last chance to shine. This may be his last chance at, impressing Vancouver and impressing, North American scouts to bring him over here. So, speaking of players who need to prove themselves in this tournament, there's a player on the team that I'm picking to win this thing who also needs to do that. Now, I'm picking, and I mean, I think everybody who's following this and everybody who's reading up on these rosters is picking Canada. Canada has 14 first-round draft picks in that lineup. Every elite player who went in that draft last year who was Canadian that's not named Alexis Lafreniere is on the team. But this is really, really, really Quentin Byfield's time to shine. This is his turn to take the reins to show people the player that he is. Last year he was the 13th forward. He didn't get a lot of time. He was given some opportunities out there to show what he could do, but he was the youngest kid on the team last year. This year, while he's not the oldest, He's probably going to be looked upon to be their first line center. He's going to be looked upon to play power play minutes. He's going to be looked upon to maybe carry this team a little bit. And this is his time to shine. But outside of Byfield, you have Zary, Perfetti. I mean, all those names you saw on the PowerPoint. I'm not going to go over them again because all you guys saw them already. But this team is stacked. I would have a hard time seeing them not only lose a tournament, but lose a game in this tournament.
Yeah, I think I have to agree completely. It's got to be Canada with this one. Canada is the clear favorite in this tournament. They have one of the deepest forward groups that I've seen coming into one of these tournaments in a long, long time. Now, that being said, it's obvious I'm going with Canada on this one, but that's not to undercut some of the other teams that could potentially make some noise in this tournament. USA has a strong lineup. They've got a really strong forward group, quite possibly the best top six amongst the entire tournament. It might, obviously, USA is not as complete with their forward group as Canada is. There's no ways or bones about that. But USA probably has the best top six amongst the entire tournament, the best, top two lines.
They have the experience.
They have the experience, exactly. And with Canada, they just take it to another level. They've got quality up and down the board. They've got quality through all four lines. They've got quality in their defense. Now, Tom had mentioned before, one guy to watch out for and to really kind of take the reins in this tournament for Canada is Quinton Byfield. And that is a name that everybody should keep in mind with this. He was the former number 2 overall pick for the Los Angeles Kings this past year. I'm going to give you a couple other names that you need to look out for as well. I think Connor McMichael is a name that a lot of people need to watch out for in this tournament. I think he is a kid that can make a lot of noise in this tournament, especially with the people who are feeding him the puck. Another name that I think a lot of people should look at as well is Braden Schneider. I think he is a player on the defensive side of the puck that I think could impress a lot of people. And, for all you Rangers fans out there, this might be your first real good look at Braden Schneider and what could be in the next few years if you're a Rangers fan. Now, obviously, you can't see, your pride and joy, your golden boy, Alexis Lafreniere in this tournament, but this is a great surprise for a Rangers fan as well. And then one more name to look out for in this tournament. God, there's so many in this one, but I'm going to be selfish on this one. I'm going to say for Devils fans, you should look out for Dawson Mercer. And I think Dawson Mercer is a guy that could get buried a little bit in this Canadian lineup, but he is a player that could make some plays out of nowhere. He's a person that can play the puck very well. He has a decent shot. And I think he could surprise and turn some heads in this tournament as well. But like I said, Canada is probably your clear-cut winner in this tournament. They're the clear favorite. And anything other than the gold medal for them this year is a disappointment. They're gunning for the gold. They're going for, to be the best of the best. And this team is also looking to be one of the most complete and dominant World Junior teams in the past 20 years. So anything other than the gold medal would be a disappointment. But as usual, what do you guys think? Do you guys like our predictions? Do you guys agree with us? Do you disagree with us? Join the conversation. We always look for some crowd participation, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's just from somebody shouting at us on the street. Let us know what you think. We want to hear all of your feedback, and we're also appreciative of all the comments that were left on this previous video. So keep it going for sure. Obviously, as per usual, make sure you follow us on i80sports.com. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at i80_sportsNHL. I want to hit 500 by the end of the year, and it only happens with you guys. And you guys are some of the best followers that we have ever had. So please, 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 please follow our Twitter. Follow the other pages on i80 Sports as well. And also, as our other note from previously, make sure you catch us on the Frozen 4 podcast this upcoming Wednesday. It's a good group of guys. Give them a listen also. They're a fun podcast. They're a fun 4 group of guys. They talk Buffalo Sabres, Toronto Maple Leafs, if that's your bag. And they also talk other news and notes around the league and just have a grand old time while doing it. If you're a fan of podcasts, you can catch them on Spotify, and you can catch us as special guests on that podcast on Wednesday night, roughly around 8 o'clock, maybe 8:30. You should be able to catch us there, and it'll be able to stream afterwards after we're live and for your own streaming purposes. And every Monday night, we're here on YouTube giving you all NHL content as per usual. I'm Brian. He's Tom. This has been I-80 NHL.